In 1982, DC Comics published an Arthurian-inspired miniseries, Camelot 3000. Here we see Tom Prentice, an archaeology student, accidentally awakens Arthur Pendragon from his resting place beneath Glastonbury Tor. The year is 3000, and the Earth is facing alien invasion. Together with his knights and Merlin, they fight the invading alien forces. An interesting take on the Arthurian legend, you may think, but it has long been a known tale in Britain that Arthur and his knights lie sleeping, waiting to be awakened in a time of need. This begs the question, where exactly do they slumber, awaiting their distant awakening? Glastonbury Tor, as depicted in the comic, emerges as a prominent candidate, believed by many to be the location of Avalon. The myth of Arthur's return to save the people of Britain were written by many, most notably of Wace, Lyman, and Geoffrey of Monmouth's work. It is said that Arthur was fatally wounded fighting Mordred in the Battle of Camlann. He was then taken to the Isle of Avalon to be healed. The Isle of Avalon, known as Anish Avacha, meaning the island of apples. Anish Avachon is also the Welsh name for Glastonbury. Although no longer an island, Glastonbury's lowland were once marshes accessed by wooden walkways. The world's oldest timber trackway post track, dated back to 3800 BCE, marked one such pathway. Giraldus Cambrensis wrote that Glastonbury was anciently called Insula Avalonia, highlighting its island-like nature surrounded by marshes where apples thrive. Over time, Glastonbury has also been referred to as the Isle of Glass. Moreover, in Welsh mythology, Annoven stands as the other world, sometimes referred to as the Glass Fortress. Some speculate that Avalon acts as a realm where departed spirits gather before proceeding to Annoven, or even the other world itself. Interestingly, in 1190, German writer Godfrey of Biterbo recorded a prophecy that Arthur would be preserved beneath the sea and continue his reign from the watery abyss. The intrigue deepens with the 1191 claim by the monks of Glastonbury's Abbey. They asserted the discovery of King Arthur and Queen Guinevere's tomb, an event likely driven by the need to salvage Abbey's finances after a devastating fire in 1184. Over the ages, numerous locations have vied for the distinction of Arthur's resting place. In this episode, we are going to look at some of them. Cumbria, England is steeped in Arthurian legend, and Blencathra in Lake District is another location where Arthur and his knights went into extended hibernation. As mentioned earlier, the Isle of Avalon is known as Anish Avacha. Avacha is also a name for the Chthonic god associated with the afterlife and the Isle of Avalon. Some believe Avacha and Gawain, the king of Annoven and Otherworld, are one and the same. That makes him the son of Neith, Welsh for God Nodens. It is said that the mountain of Blencathra is the home of Avacha, where Arthur was taken after being wounded. Numerous landmarks in Cumbria are tied to Arthurian legends, from an earthwork at Edmund Bridge named King Arthur's Round Table, Pendragon Castle, attributed to Arthur's father, Uther Pendragon, by the river Eden, to Bassenwaith Lake, where the Lady of the Lake gifted Arthur the mighty Excalibur, It's not hard to see why Cumbrians feel they have a strong claim to the once and future king. A gentleman's magazine in London and Harriet Martineau recorded a few sightings during the mid-18th century around Blencathra. All accounts claim to have witnessed otherworldly possession of soldiers. Could this be Arthur and his knights? There's no way to tell, as there were no specific description of their clothing. Alderley Edge is another contender. Legend tells of a farmer from Moberly, Cheshire, was on his way to Marcasville Market to sell his white mare. This horse, the jewel of his stock, held the promise of fetching a handsome price at the market. As he passed the imposing sandstone cliffs of Alderley Edge, the horse abruptly refused to move, defying the farmer's effort. Beside the road stood an elderly man of regal bearing, distinguished by a flowing white beard and an attire reminiscent of a bygone era, with a staff of black wood in his hand. The stranger expressed interest in purchasing the horse, but the farmer refused, thinking that he would get a better price at the market. The old man told him that he would seek in vain to dispose of his steed, for whom a nobler destiny was in store. Undeterred, the farmer proceeded to Marcasville. Despite everyone praised the mare, nobody would buy it, as if ensnared by an unseen enchantment. Disappointed, the farmer embarked on his journey back home, encountering the same man at Alderley Edge. This time, the farmer agreed to sell, and the old man told the farmer to follow him. Silently, the elder led the way and passed landmarks like the Seven Firs, the Golden Stone, and Stormy Point. A sight just beyond Saddle Bow marked the culmination of their journey. Here, the old man held out his staff and uttered a spell, opening the rock, revealing 2 large iron gates. "Fear nothing," spoke the old man, "and behold a sight which no mortal eye has ever looked upon." The gates parting to unveil a subterranean passage. Their path led to a cavern where rows of sleeping knights lay adorned in ancient armor. Deeper within, and treasure amassed on the cavern floor, where he told the farmer to take the price he desired for his horse. In solemn tones, he shared the prophecy. "You see these men and horses. The number was not complete. Your horse was wanted to make it complete. Remember my words, and there will come a day when these men and these horses, awakening from their enchanted slumber, will descend into the plain, decide the fate of a great battle, and save their country. They shall be when George the son of George shall reign." Having imparted this revelation, the elder gently laid the farmer's mare to rest in an enchanted sleep. As he departed, the iron gates still shut, vanishing from sight. Despite many attempts, the entrance to the cavern has remained undiscovered. The legend since passed down in oral tradition and eventually surfaced in print. In 1805, the Manchester Mail featured the story, The Cheshire Enchanter, originating from the account of Parson Shickley, a former curate of Alderley, who traced its origin back to the late 1600s. Subsequently, a pamphlet titled The Cheshire Enchanter, or The Legend of the Iron Gates, expanded upon the narrative. In 1867, Colonel Egerton Lee's Ballads and Legends of Cheshire introduced James Roscoe's poem, The Iron Gate, a Legends of Alderley, which attributed the sleepers within the iron gates to King Arthur and his knights, and the elder as Merlin. The exact location of the iron gates remain veiled in uncertainty, although some speculate it lies between Stormy Point and the Holy Well, guarded by the legend. Speaking of Holy Well, commonly known as Wizard's Well, it has upon it a carved wizard's head and the inscription which reads, "Drink of this and take thy fill, for the water falls by the wizard's well," reputedly created by a local stonemason, Robert Garner, the great-great-grandfather of local renowned author Alan Garner, known for his enchanting children's fantasy novel, The Weird Stone of Brisingamen. In one of the previous episodes, we talked about Thomas the Rhymer, a man who went with the Elven Queen from the magical Eldon Hills, and how Thomas was said to be gathering horses for the sleeping knights that rest deep within the hollow hills. Sir Walter Scott, in his Letters of Demonology and Witchcraft, wrote about this border tale with close resemblance to the legend of the Orderly Age. The legend of Eldon Hills tells of a border horse dealer named Canobidic. He found himself halted about the moor, west side of the Eldon Hills, by a man of venerable and antique appearance. This figure, unbeknownst to Kenobi at the time, would later be unveiled as Thomas the Rhymer. Just as the wizard of the Orderly Age, this man bought a black horse which Kenobi failed to sell at the local fair and pay with ancient coins. This encounter reoccurs several nights in a row. Intrigued by this mysterious customer, Kenobi asked if he can be invited to the man's dwelling, to which the stranger agreed, yet issued a foreboding caution, warning Kenobi that hesitating in the face of what awaited could lead to a lifetime of regret. Their journey to a hillock known as Look Hair, where they enter a passage that took them deep beneath a vast cavern under the magical Elden Tree. Inside the cavern, in a long range of stables, stood motionless coal-black horses by sleeping knights in ancient armor. All these men would awaken at the Battle of Sheriff Moor, said the man to Kenobi. A sword and a horn lay on an antique table. The man said, "He that shall sound that horn and draw that sword shall, if his heart fail him not, be king over all broad Britain. But all depends on courage, and much on your taking the sword or horn first." Fearing to draw the sword first would offend the sacred mountain, Kenobi chose to sound the horn. In that instant, the horses stamped. The knights arose and clashed their armor. Overwhelmed by terror, Kenobi relinquished the horn. A voice like that of a giant pronounced these words, "Woe to the coward that ever he was born, that did not draw the sword before he blew the horn." A terrible wind arose and swept the horse dealer right out of the cavern. He was found the next morning by local shepherds, clinging to life only long enough to recount his harrowing tale before passing. Dr. John Leyden wrote in his Poetical Remains that the knights were the hosts of King Arthur, waiting till the appointed return of their monarch from fairyland. Look Hair, akin to Orderly Age, bore rumours of being a cavern's meeting place and harbouring gates to the underworld and fairy domains. Despite many quests, the cavern's elusive entrance remained beyond reach, a testimony to the mystique and elusiveness of its secrets. These stories are just a glimpse into the vast number of locations and claiming connection to Arthur's slumber. Other places including Stoinshields Castle in Hexham, Northumberland, Freeborough Hill, Rhondda Cynontaf, Craig Dinas in Brecon Beacons National Parks in Wales, and many more. From the western tips of Cornwall to the Scottish Highlands, the list goes on. One thing they all have in common, perhaps a number of megalith sites surrounding them. Glastonbury, as many are aware of, is on a famous St Michael ley line. Alderley Edge is a centre of crossover point for several lines. The Sleeping King and the King Under the Mountain has been the popular theme in folklores and legends across nations. Tamar the Great of Georgia, Frederick Barbarossa, the Holy Roman Emperor, King Henry the Fowler of Germany, Fionn McCool of Ireland, Holger Danske of Denmark, to name a few, all say to be sleeping somewhere under the mountain, caven, a remote island, and will return in their time of greatest need. But none has a volume of stories written like Arthur. Other than the numerous locations in Britain, the king was said to be in Brittany, France, even found in Mount Etna in Sicily. Imagine the king having tea with Typhon, who was cast under that very mount by Zeus. Everyone wanted to have a piece of the pie, in this case, an apple pie. Legends of heroes were often created from centuries of wars and sufferings. We struggle with the notion of loss, refuse to let them go. Although the once and future King Arthur's existence is sketchy at best, and he sure seems to miss the memos from the last few hundreds of years, it doesn't stop stories of hope that he and his brave knights will one day return to save us from the turmoil. And perhaps just like the comic, they shall rise in the case of alien invasion. Or maybe, just maybe, as Robert Jordan wrote in the well-timed series, one has to blow the horn of Valere in order to summon the legendary Arthur Hawkwind and the great heroes from Tiar and Riod, the World of Dreams, to battle, to fight for the light.